Okay, folks. Yesterday, our realm had a trial on the Breadman's stream, uh, where one of the members of our group committed a couple of crimes. We had a hearing, we had a trial, the whole 9 yards. And during that trial, it was made apparent that none of us were prepared with rules of our realm. So this is just being done for posterity's sake. The code of laws for Zooville and the greater Rom area. Rom is the country I run, Zooville is the main city. So, rule number 1. Destruction of property outside of the zoo will be punished with a fine of up to 10 gold ingots, depending on level of damage, and the materials to repair that damage. Our currency is gold, it's not emeralds, simply because there are so many cities that emeralds are basically useless, whereas gold is not. Uh, Rule number 2, or law number 2, damage to the zoo itself, in addition to any fines from the previous law, may include the release of a warden onto the property of the person who caused the damage. The zoo took me 10 months about to complete, and so I will not tolerate any vandalism to the zoo. It will be met with extreme prejudice, and this is just a warning to the others on the realm. Not that I think they would screw with it, but it's here in writing. Law number 3, damage to the Church of the End, including the graveyard, that's supposed to be end its inhabitants, is considered heresy. In addition to regular damage or destruction fees, reparations must also include a totem of undying. Any graffiti, law number 4, including damaging, replacing, or rewriting any signs, which does include the item frames outside of shops, will also result in a fine of up to 10 gold ingots, depending on the severity of the damage. Theft of any item, material, or block will be fined with the things will result in a fine of the things stolen being returned in duplicate. So anything stolen, you have to return 2 of anything stolen. It applies to any building material, decoration, or chest, including anything within them, or any non-farmable block. Now there is an exemption to that rule. It does not apply, as far as I'm concerned, to self-replicating items like lava in cauldrons from dripstone, or food from an auto farm, because that just replaces itself. Now, if a stolen item cannot be duplicated, like a dragon egg or some of those specialty books that have 2 or 3 different enchantments on them, a judge will select a substitute item. Rule 6, I do allow the purchasing of plots of land. You can see off in the corner here a couple empty plots. Those plots count as embassies. They will follow their own owner's castle doctrines. That power does end at street level, so it's only for the plot itself, and does not extend to any of Rom's villagers who might happen to wander onto the property. The Rom's villagers have their own rules, but the embassies themselves, they're kind of sovereign land. However, embassies cannot be built offensively in any way. You can't have offensive symbols, writing, or images, things like that. And they also cannot exceed a block height of 40 blocks. I wrote this up, by the way, on my Switch, which is why there's so many spelling errors or missing letters, like the F and the of over here. But I don't want anything over 40 blocks in Zooville at least. Maybe in Greater ROM that might be fine to go higher. But I want to maintain a relatively simplistic aesthetic for the city, and so nothing over 40 blocks. And even 40 is a little high, because that takes it to 104 build height. But I will allow up to 40. I do reserve the right to demolish any embassy that does not meet the regulations up here, though. So if something's offensive, if something's built too high, blocking view, whatever, I do have the right to demolish that building. Other than that, embassies are their own, plots of land are the owner's own embassy. Okay, any violent crimes like assault, murder, attempted murder, and so forth, or even the threat of them, may be countered with violent action, including up to death. The ruler of Rom, myself, may determine when violence is needed on a case-by-case basis. And the big one here, which came up during the trial, is the rights of the villagers themselves. In my realm, in my area, villagers are considered to be equal in status to players with one exception. Aggressive actions against them will be fined with a minimum of 1 gold block or netherite ingot, and, in addition to whichever one of those, 1 golden apple. So guaranteed 1 golden apple, also 1 gold block or 1 netherite ingot. Just for assaulting my villagers, a lot of time has been spent on them. Now, the exception to violence on villagers is, of course, zombification. Zombification is not considered a violent crime if the villager is cured within 10 minutes, and the zombification does not spread to other villagers during that curing process. If it does spread, and if it winds up being an issue where the villagers all need to be cured, I may bring up murder charges. And then the last two, any other crime not listed, including the server rules, will be taken to court through lawsuit, with punishments and fees determined by a judge. And just because a crime is not listed does not mean it isn't a crime. We all know what does or does not count as a crime, and nitpicking whether or not it was one will not count. For instance, during the trial, a villager had been held hostage, and an argument was made that the villagers are treated as objects and therefore cannot be considered hostages. That's not the case. You know it's a crime. And so just because it's not specifically mentioned doesn't mean you can't be punished for it. But those are my main rules. They're fairly simple. Don't destroy any of my property. If you do, you're going to get a fine. If you damage the zoo, I will probably destroy your town by releasing a warden onto you. I know how to do it. I will do it with prejudice. Don't damage my church. Don't graffiti the place. Don't steal anything, except for self-duplicating items. Those are fine. You can buy plots of land. I don't have a price set, but I eventually will. Anything you buy is essentially yours, with some exceptions. And then don't attack players or villagers in my kingdom. Those are the big ones. But otherwise, I wanted to at least get that out there so that, if nothing else, it has been recorded for posterity's sake. And so, should something happen to my book here, which, let's be honest, is possible, and it looks like it needs edited anyway, so I'll have to write a whole new one. At least the rules for my realm are set. And I'm imagining that the other players on this realm are doing something very similar. But anyway, thanks for watching that extremely boring explanation of my rules.